Hello and welcome to Daily Reflection with Aneel Aranha. Today is the 3rd of November 2018. We're going to reflect on Luke chapter 11, 1 and verses 7 to 11. Listen. On one occasion, when Jesus was going to the house of a leader of the Pharisees to eat a meal on the Sabbath, they were watching him closely. When he noticed how the guests chose the places of honor, he told them a parable. When you are invited by someone to a wedding banquet, do not sit down at the place of honor in case someone more distinguished than you has been invited by your host. And the host who invited both of you may come and say to you, give this person your place. And then in disgrace you would start to take the lowest place. But when you are invited, go and sit down at the lowest place so that when your host comes, he may say to you, friend, move up higher. Then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at the table with you. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. The Gospel of the Lord. Have you ever been humiliated? I have been humiliated, and deeply at that quite a few times in my life. And although these incidents were very painful, I have been grateful because they have proved to be very powerful instruments of change in my life. How? Because I realized it was God cutting me down to size, and eventually I learned that it was better to be humble and then raised rather than be proud and then made to fall. So how does one be humble? Let me suggest 3 ways. One is by not thinking of yourself too often. To quote C.S. Lewis, true humility is not thinking less of yourself, it is thinking of yourself less. When we don't think about ourselves too often, we avoid the sin of vanity and the need to be constantly praised. But please don't go the other way and start thinking badly of yourself, because that would be insulting God and the wonderful person He has created you to be. A second way is by thinking more of others. When you stop looking at yourself, you almost automatically start looking at others, and you realize the tremendous pain that most people are in. And when you start to empathize with this, you want to help them. This is, of course, very pleasing to God, who tells us that if we want to be great, we have to be servants of all. Please note again, I have said this in previous reflections, that God has nothing against greatness. He just disapproves of some of the methods that we use. A third way, and this is by far the most effective, is by thinking of God very often. And if you can do this all the time, then you will see how humility becomes second nature to you. Is it possible to think of God all the time? Yes. There was a monk called Brother Lawrence of the Resurrection, who lived in 17th century France, who developed the practice of the presence of God into a fine art, and he lived permanently in the presence of God. We can learn a thing or two from him, and there are plenty of resources available online. All 3 ways require us to follow Jesus' advice to pick up our cross daily and follow him. If we remain conscious of our actions, paying attention to the things that we do that lead to an inflated ego, then we can purposefully prevent that from happening. That is what Jesus means by carrying our cross. It is dying to oneself. And paradoxically, when we die, we live. I end with something Jesus said today: all those who humble themselves will be exalted. So if it is exaltation you seek, you know what to do? Be humble. God bless you.